You've probably felt it without being able to explain it clearly. That strange pattern where things don't move the way they should, where situations begin to fall apart right when they start to matter, where your energy feels drained even when nothing around you justifies it. It's subtle, almost easy to ignore, but it's been consistent enough to make you question what's really going on. And your heart needs this right now, because what you've been experiencing is not as random as you've been telling yourself. There are moments in life where resistance doesn't come from obvious problems, but from something quieter, something hidden beneath the surface that influences how things unfold. And listen carefully. When something works against you in silence, it becomes harder to recognize because there's nothing clear to point at, nothing visible to blame. You just feel the effects without understanding the source. But something is changing now, and that's why this moment matters. Because the same pressure you've been feeling is beginning to lift. The same patterns that kept repeating are starting to break. And the same unseen weight that slowed you down is losing its grip. You may not see the full picture yet, but you can sense the shift. And that shift is not coincidence. It's the beginning of something being removed from your life, something that no longer has the same power it once did. And if you stay aware of this moment, you'll begin to notice that what once felt heavy is no longer controlling you in the same way. What has been working against you was never obvious, and that's exactly why it was able to affect you for so long without being clearly recognized. It didn't show up in a direct or confrontational way. It didn't present itself as something you could easily identify and remove. Instead, it operated through patterns, subtle disruptions, repeated delays, moments where things seemed to almost come together and then suddenly fall apart without a clear explanation. And your heart needs this right now, because when something works in that way, it creates confusion more than resistance. You don't immediately fight it, you question yourself instead. You start wondering if you made the wrong decision, if you missed something, if you're the reason things aren't moving forward. But listen carefully. What you've been experiencing is not just about your choices or your effort. There has been an underlying influence creating imbalance, something that interfered with your progress in ways that didn't make sense at the time. It showed up as hesitation where there should have been clarity, as setbacks where there should have been momentum, as doubt where there should have been confidence. And because it wasn't visible, it felt like part of your normal experience, something you had to simply deal with instead of something you could recognize and separate from yourself. And your heart needs this right now, because understanding this changes how you see everything that happened before. It wasn't just random misfortune or bad timing. It was a pattern that kept repeating until now. And the reason it's important to see it clearly is because once something is recognized, it begins to lose its control. What once operated in the background no longer has the same ability to influence you when you become aware of its presence. And listen to this. This is why things are starting to feel different now. The same situations that once felt confusing are becoming clearer. The same pressure that once felt constant is beginning to ease. The same cycle that kept repeating is starting to break apart. And that shift is not coming from external circumstances alone. It's coming from the weakening of whatever was holding that pattern in place. And your heart needs this right now, because this is the point where you move from being affected by something you didn't understand to becoming aware of it as something that no longer belongs in your life. What is happening now is not random, and it's not something that just suddenly appeared without cause. There is a reason why this shift is taking place at this exact moment in your life. Because whatever was influencing you before was only able to operate under certain conditions that are no longer fully present. And your heart needs this right now, because something has changed, not just around you, but within you. The same patterns that once held power over your thoughts, your energy, and your direction are starting to weaken, because the foundation they depended on is no longer stable. And listen carefully. Hidden influences lose their strength when awareness increases. They rely on confusion, on doubt, on repeated cycles that go unquestioned. But the moment you begin to see things clearly, even if only partially at first, that control begins to break. And that's exactly where you are now. You are no longer reacting the same way. You are no longer accepting the same patterns without questioning them. And even if you haven't fully realized it, that shift alone is enough to disrupt what once had control. And your heart needs this right now, because this is not just about something external losing power. It's about you no longer feeding that power in the same way. Before, there may have been moments where you doubted yourself more easily, where you second-guessed your decisions, where you felt pulled back into the same cycles without understanding why. But now something is different. There is more awareness, more recognition, more resistance to what doesn't feel right. And that change is what is causing everything else to weaken. Because when something no longer has your full attention, your full belief, or your full energy, it cannot maintain the same level of influence over your life. And listen to this. This is why the shift may feel subtle, but significant at the same time. You may not see dramatic changes immediately, but you can sense that things are no longer the same. The weight is lighter. The confusion is less intense. The patterns are not repeating as strongly as they once did. And your heart needs this right now, because this is the beginning of release. This is the point where something that once felt constant starts to fade. Not all at once, not instantly, but steadily. And as it fades, you begin to regain control in areas where you once felt limited. You begin to think more clearly, act more confidently, and move forward without the same resistance that used to slow you down. And this is not something that can reverse easily, because once awareness reaches a certain level, it cannot return to complete unawareness. And that's what makes this moment important. Because what is losing power now is something that depended on you not fully seeing it. And now that you do, even if only partially, its hold over your life cannot remain the same. Now this is where you begin to actually notice the difference in a way that no longer feels imagined or uncertain, because the shift that started internally is now starting to reflect outward in your life. And your heart needs this right now, because when something that once had influence begins to lose its power, it doesn't disappear silently without leaving signs behind. Those signs may not be dramatic, but they are real, and they are consistent if you pay attention. You may start to feel a sense of calm in situations that once created pressure, a clarity in moments where you used to feel confused, a steadiness in your thoughts where there was once hesitation. And listen carefully. This is not you forcing yourself to feel different. This is the natural result of something no longer weighing on you the same way it did before. The patterns that once repeated automatically begin to break. Situations that used to trigger the same reactions no longer affect you in the same intensity. And your heart needs this right now, because this is how you know the shift is real. It's not just about what is leaving, it's about what is returning to you. Your clarity, your focus, your control over how you respond to what happens around you. You may also notice that things start to move more smoothly, that opportunities don't feel as blocked, that decisions don't feel as complicated. And while it may seem small at first, that smoothness is a sign that resistance is no longer operating in the same way. And listen to this. When something that was interfering with your progress begins to weaken, it creates space. Space for movement, space for alignment, space for things to unfold without being disrupted. And that space is what allows you to finally move forward in a way that feels natural instead of forced. And your heart needs this right now, because you might still be expecting things to feel the way they used to, out of habit. You might still be waiting for the same obstacles, the same delays, the same confusion to show up again. But as time goes on, you will begin to realize that those patterns are no longer as strong, no longer as consistent, no longer as controlling. And that realization is what confirms the shift. It's not just a temporary change, it's a transition into a different state where what once held power no longer defines your experience. And the more you stay aware of these signs, the more you allow yourself to trust them, the more clearly you will see that something has truly changed, and that you are no longer under the same influence you once were. Now everything comes down to what you do with this shift. Because when something that once had power over your life begins to weaken, there is a critical moment that follows. A moment where you either step fully into your own control or slowly allow old patterns to return. And your heart needs this right now, because just because something is losing power does not mean it is completely gone. It means its influence is fading, and what happens next depends on how you respond. If you fall back into the same habits, the same doubts, the same reactions that once kept you stuck, you unintentionally give that influence a way to reconnect. But if you stay aware, if you recognize the difference in how you feel and how things are unfolding now, you begin to solidify this shift into something permanent. And listen carefully, this is not about becoming perfect or never experiencing difficulty again. It's about no longer allowing the same unseen patterns to control your direction. You now have a level of awareness that you didn't have before, and that awareness is your strength. It allows you to pause before reacting, to question what doesn't feel right, to choose your response instead of being pulled into automatic cycles. And your heart needs this right now, because this is where your power truly returns. Not in a sudden, dramatic way, but in a steady, grounded way where you begin to trust yourself again. You begin to move forward without constantly expecting something to go wrong. You begin to make decisions with clarity instead of hesitation. And that change in you is what keeps this negative influence from regaining any control. And listen to this. What is leaving your life does not need to be fought aggressively. It simply needs to be replaced with awareness and intention. The more you focus on what is clear, what is aligned, what feels stable and right, the less space there is for anything that once created confusion or imbalance. And over time, that absence becomes permanent. And your heart needs this right now, because this is not just the end of something negative, it is the beginning of a different way of living. A way where you are no longer reacting to hidden forces, but actively shaping your own path. A way where your energy is no longer being drained by things you don't understand, but directed toward things that actually move you forward. And as you continue in this direction, you will notice that the same situations that once felt overwhelming no longer have the same effect. The same patterns that once repeated begin to disappear completely, and that's when you'll fully realize that what once had power over you is no longer part of your life in the same way. But this only stays true if you remain aware of it. If you continue choosing clarity over confusion, intention over reaction, and growth over returning to what once held you back. Because this moment is not just about something losing power. It's about you stepping into a level of control that ensures it never has that power again.